All right, y'all. Welcome back to the podcast. It is another sunny, beautiful early morning here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am out again, well, really on a daily basis here at my local nature preserve, getting in a nice little hike or walk this morning. It's funny, I've gotten myself in this all new, brand new habit of basically getting up every morning, getting over to the park right as the sun is coming up, right when they open the gates. And I've been getting in about 2 hours every morning. And now I've got myself into that habit, and I've really enjoyed doing this and getting out and just enjoying my local nature preserve and all the trails it has to offer, and some new trails that I've noticed and gone on over this past week that they've relocated, redone, all the things. But anyway, just out here enjoying this morning, and I wanted to come on. This is going to be the MRI results, my shoulder MRI results and surgery plan episode. But the very first thing that I have to say to you guys is thank you, thank you, thank you. The email response that I got from last week's episode, y'all have blown me away with the emails that I've received and you guys sharing your own stories and thoughts on the podcast. And I have to say, of everything I've received, the emails, some people did send me messages, text messages. It's just been overwhelmingly positive. And I thank you all for that. And I've got some ideas, a couple episodes I'm going to put together over the next couple weeks, sharing those actual emails, because I think it's important that not only for myself, that I know who's listening to the show, but you all have given me some new podcasts to listen to, some new videos to watch, some new trails, and I want to share some of that information out there with you all because I think it's important. Obviously, I'm not going to share names or anything like that. I would never do that, but sharing information is really what this podcast is about. And I've got some ideas over the next couple weeks. But before we get to that, I actually put an agenda together. And of course, as always, I don't even know how this happens, y'all. I get to a hill, and that's the part where I need to read from my phone. But I did put an agenda together. I want to talk about actually getting the arthrogram itself and the MRI, and then the results, talking with my doctor, the surgery plan, and then actually the recovery and what that is going to entail. So here we go, folks. A whole new regime and a whole new thing going on. But getting the actual arthrogram and the MRI itself was very seamless. I had an MRI, I had an arthrogram. Well, they're two separate things. One, the arthrogram, and then two, after you get the arthrogram, going straight into the MRI. And really the arthrogram, you just go in, they lay you on a table, give you a nice warm blanket. I could have fallen asleep big time. And really what they do is in the shoulder where you're having issues, they inject like numbing medication, and then they inject a dye into your shoulder so the MRI pictures come out better. And actually the dye is supposed to go to certain places, and I'm probably getting this all wrong, so forgive me. And then the places where the dye shows up or something, or doesn't show up, that can indicate a tear or whatever. So get all that done. And what they do it there, once they inject everything, they take several scans of the shoulder, and I actually got to see a couple of those scans. And then they immediately swoop you up and take you into the MRI room. And it was freezing in there. So they have you lay down to get ready to go into the tomb, I guess. And put another warm blanket on me. Put like what I'm going to call construction style headphones, which really helped with the noising and the banging and the clanking that goes on when you have an MRI. And the guy said, well, if you stay still, you'll be out of here in less than 15 minutes. And he was right. It was about 13 minutes. And of course, they position your shoulder in a different way and put something on your shoulder so they can get better pictures of that specific area. And then you get out of there, and you're always, the first thing I want to know is, when am I going to see the results? And of course, I'm not going to ask that because I know it takes a day or two. But y'all, this time, by the time I got home, which was about 30 minutes after I was done, I already had messages that my results were in. So it took less than an hour, and I actually had 2 reports, one from the arthrogram itself, and then one from the actual MRI. And I actually want to read you all those results, which I knew there was good. I knew there had to be something ripped and torn, right? There had to be damage. And so just to give context, back in 2015, I did, after my shoulder came out the first time going up Mount Moosilauke in 2015, I actually had what they call a labral repair, where they go in and anchor back down the cartilage in the shoulder joint in between the shoulder. And I guess now that is considered a failed labral repair, and that is not uncommon. One of the questions I asked the doctor was, why does that fail? And he turned around and looked at me and said, have you looked and seen what you've done? And I was like, all right, touche, fair enough. Anyway, so when you get your MRI report, at the bottom of the report, those of you that have had an MRI, you'll know what I'm talking about. Or at the top of the report in this case, the person that reads the report, they give you their overall impressions. And basically, I had a breakdown of 4 different things that were very clear in the MRI. And the first one is, I have what's called a Hill-Sachs impaction fracture and bone bruise. And that is when the upper arm, I'm reading you this, some more formal definitions, that I got off of the formal Google. With the upper arm bone dislocated forward and slammed against the hard rim of the socket, this creates a dent or compression fracture. So I have a compression fracture on the back side of my bone because when it dislocates, it moves forward. It creates a dent, and it's kind of like a deflated basketball or soccer ball. It kind of just dents in is the only way I can describe it. And honestly, I had this before because I remember this very specific terminology on my report from back in 2015. But obviously now the dent is a little more defined. So that was the first thing. The second thing is a labral tear with chondral injury. So what that is, basically the labrum, the bumper where my shoulder came out, there's a bumper of cartilage there. It's torn again, obviously. And if you're looking at a clock, it's torn between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock, which is exactly where my arm came out. So that is no surprise. The third thing is I have an anterior inferior glenohumeral ligament tear. And this is what it says. I'm going to stop and read this. It says, this is a primary ligament responsible for preventing the shoulder from sliding forward and downward out of its socket. A tear here combined with the labral tear significantly reduces the joint's natural physical constraints. So there's that. And then the last thing is a partial thickness supraspinatus tear. I'm probably saying that all kinds of wrong. The supraspinatus is one of your rotator cuff muscles. You have a small incomplete fraying or tear where it attaches to the bone. The report notes no full thickness tear, no retraction, the muscle hasn't snapped back, and no atrophy. So I guess that's good, which is very reassuring news for your rotator cuff health. So there were the findings, and then everything I looked up, and of course became, my own doctor and advocate and all the things, and I wanted to have as much information. So at this point, I got the MRI and the arthrogram, I got the results, and then the next day is when I was going to pretty much see the doctor. So go to the doctor appointment, meet with him, and basically, y'all, there is no ifs, ands, or buts about this shoulder. Physical therapy is not going to do anything for this. I've got to get those tears fixed, and then he is going to work on that Hill-Sachs fracture or lesion or whatever they call it in my bone. So basically, the surgery I'm having, it is arthroscopic, so that's good. They don't have to do any major cuts or anything like that. But I wanted to read this. This is hilarious. Where did it go here? So this is from Google AI. It says, this MRI report describes a classic cluster of injuries that typically occur after an anterior shoulder dislocation, where the ball of the joint slips out of the front of the socket. Together, these findings indicate structural instability in your shoulder that will require evaluation from an orthopedic specialist. Well, I got the evaluation, and I've got a very good specialist. So basically what he said he's going to do, they make some poke holes around the shoulder. That's what he called them. And they stick the camera in there, and basically he's going to repair anything that's torn, ripped, out of order, out of line, suture everything down, tighten my shoulder up, and along with that, he is also going to do what is called an arthroscopic Remplissage. Now I'm getting all that wrong. Which is where I'm going to read this to you guys. It says, this procedure is frequently performed at the same time as a Bankart repair. That's just where they go in and repair all the cartilage. If your Hill-Sachs fracture, the dent in the ball is large or catches on the edge of the socket. So he says without this Remplissage procedure, basically that dent in my shoulder bone, in the circular part of the bone, anytime I put my arm in that particular position, that is when, basically that shoulder is going to dislocate. So, all right, you guys wore your dog out. Have a good day. So basically that is just, you got to fix it, or, it just has the potential to pretty much do all that again. So the procedure itself is the surgeon takes a nearby rotator cuff tendon, the infraspinatus, and its attached joint capsule. They fixate this tissue directly into the Hill-Sachs bone dent using small anchors, and it fills in, which is the definition of remplissage. Apparently that's a French term, according to what the surgeon told me. It fills in the defects so the ball can roll smoothly without dropping out of the socket. And that is what we need. I mean, pretty much, I want him to do whatever he's got to do So the likeliness of this happening again is very, very, very low. So anyway, during the doctor visit, he pulled up the MRI and pointed and showed me all the things. And of course, I'm acting like I know what I'm seeing, but it was pretty cool how he took his time and showed me different views of my shoulder and where exactly all this stuff is and where he can see that it's torn and very obvious of what needs to happen. And I feel very comfortable with him, and he's done many, many, many of these procedures, and the shoulder is his thing, and he comes highly recommended, and I really like his bedside manner. He likes to joke and have fun and understands hiking and everything that goes along with that, which is why, he was like, really, based on what you like to do, you want to know why this might have failed. And we had a good laugh about that. So anyway, all of that is done. The waiting for all of that is over. And when we were leaving, he said, my scheduler will get in contact with you and we'll set the surgery up as soon as possible, or as soon as we can, as soon as insurance does all their thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to take another... I don't know why I doubt anything. I was thinking this will take another week. Y'all, that night, his scheduler called me, and for some reason I had my phone on. I just didn't hear it ring, basically. And so the very next morning, she called me back. We got the surgery scheduled. It is scheduled for the last week of July, and I am the first one on the waiting list. If for some reason there happens to be a cancellation, so we've got another week and a half or so, just a little over a week and a half, and then we are going to be having this surgery, which I'm very thankful and grateful for, because that gives me about 3, almost 4 weeks until I have to go back to work, and then going from there. So y'all, there you have it. There's what's been going on. There's the results. There's what's happening. And I do want to talk a little bit about some of the recovery. Basically what he told me, he was like, for the first 4 weeks, you're going to be watching paint dry. He just wants everything to heal naturally. I will not be going to physical therapy until after 4 weeks. Basically, I'm going to be chilling and probably going crazy. So y'all pray for me after the surgery that I don't go crazy. But anyway, I won't go crazy. Y'all know I'm kidding. But for all of us that listen to this podcast and myself, sitting around is almost the worst. And watching paint dry. And he said, you're going to be watching paint dry, and that thing needs to harden down and do its thing and basically heal properly so I can have a full recovery and move on from this. But as we were leaving, he said, get everything done you need to before surgery that you were planning to do before December, because, he's just basically giving me a timeline. I get it. And my job now becomes having the surgery and recovering and going back to work. So that's kind of where we are at. And that is where I will leave this episode, because that's all I know for now. But over the next couple weeks, I'm going to record a couple more episodes. I just think it's so important. I really want to share and take the time and share y'all's emails. So again, not only for my purpose, but so you all can hear about who's actually listening to the show, which I think is really cool. So over the next couple weeks, be looking forward to that. Obviously, I will do an episode after I have the surgery and share all the goodness from that. And then because of your emails, I've got a pretty good idea how this podcast is going to roll going forward. And you all have given me clarity. And what I'm going to do is it just makes sense. And rest assured, there is more of the podcast to come. So I will leave it to you all for now. I am going to continue my walk and enjoy this beautiful morning here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Until we meet again, folks, thanks for listening and be safe out there. All right, I am back at the end of the episode, still out walking at the park. And I just thought about something, random thoughts that pop up as you're hiking. Something the doctor said the other day when he was explaining the MRI to me. He kept saying, someone with 52,000 miles on their body. And I was like, what? And then I finally got it. 52 years old, but he's relating it to hiking in miles. And he was like, well, someone with 52,000 miles on their shoulder, I mean, your bones are great. So, y'all, I got good bones.